Hey guys, tonight we journey across ancient sands to follow the life of one of the richest people to have ever lived. Not just in Africa, not just in history, but possibly in all of human existence. You're going to walk in the golden footprints of Mansa Musa, Emperor of Mali. Picture it a warm orange sun low over the horizon, casting long shadows over golden dunes and bustling towns. Camels snort in the distance. Markets buzz. Gold dust is literally blowing in the wind. And in the middle of it all, you just a baby for now, but destined to shine so brightly the world will tilt its maps to fit your legend. But don't get too comfortable. Your empire will be bathed in wealth, yes, but also politics, desserts, lost kings, and if you're not careful, a few backstabbing cousins. You probably won't survive this in one piece. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And tell me, where are you watching from, and what time is it for you? I want to know who's listening out there in the dark. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're born under the Sahelian sun in the royal Keita dynasty of Mali. No fireworks, no royal parade. Just your mother humming an old man-day lullaby while brushing gold flecks off your forehead. Gold is so common in Mali, even babies get a little sparkle. You cry, of course. Newborn lungs. But your cry sounds like prophecy to the old griot sitting outside the hut. He mutters something about a child of gold and pulls his cloak tighter, suddenly chilly, despite the dry heat. Your name isn't Musa yet. You're a Keita child related to Sundiata Keita, the Lion King founder of Mali himself. But your story starts modestly. You grow up in a mud brick house, barefoot in the dust, catching lizards, chasing goats, and trying not to get trampled by the older kids practicing spear throws. In the markets, you learn to walk between shimmering mounds of salt and slabs of meat smoked so dry it could crack a tooth. One day you pick up a pebble, only it isn't a pebble, it's a nugget of gold. Not unusual here. You tuck it behind your ear like a secret. By age 6, you're already noticing the world's hierarchy. The court officials wear thick robes and heavy scent oils. The griots carry stories sharper than knives. The traders, they speak half a dozen tongues and always have a clever hand on their coin pouch. You sit on the edge of grown-up conversations and start asking real questions. Why do the salt traders ride camels but the gold traders walk? Why are the loudest men always the ones saying the least? Your mother laughs. Because loud men hide fear, she says, and camels hate gold. That's probably not true, but it's good enough for a 6-year-old. You grow. The dry season blurs into the wet. The Niger River swells and retreats like a heartbeat. You learn not to step too close to the banks where crocodiles slide silently under the surface. One old uncle swears they're trained by smugglers to guard hidden treasure. You believe him until you see a crocodile sunbathing with its mouth open, utterly disinterested in anything but flies. Historians still argue whether you were the son or nephew of a previous king family trees in 13th century Mali are more tangled than a pile of camel reins. But one thing is clear, you're royal blood. That means politics, expectations, and lessons. So many lessons. You learn Arabic letters, Mande riddles, Quranic verses, and more frustrating than anything, how to sit still. Not your strong suit. You squirm through lectures on lineage and law, dreaming of sneaking out to the markets again, maybe finding another gold pebble or following the sound of music drifting from a passing caravan. At night, the stars hang so close they feel like lamps. You lie on a reed mat listening to your father speak with travelers from the Ghanaian border. They talk of distant cities, Jenewalata, even places across the sea. One man insists he's seen water so wide it never ends. You imagine riding a camel to that edge, tossing gold into the waves just to hear the splash? Your uncle catches you one night trying to build a tiny mosque from river clay. You claim it's just a game, but he watches you carefully. He sees something else in you, vision maybe, or stubbornness. And then one day there's a storm. Not of wind, but of whispers. The king, your uncle or cousin, depending on who's counting, is missing. He sailed west, people say, with hundreds of ships. He wanted to see what lay beyond the horizon. Some claim he was swallowed by the sea. Others say he found paradise and stayed. No one knows. But suddenly you're no longer the curious prince collecting gold pebbles. You're heir to one of the richest empires in the known world. And you're not even 20. They crown you Mansa Musa. Mansa means king, but it also means weight. You feel it pressing on your shoulders heavier than a slab of salt, heavier than all that glittering gold. You're still adjusting to the weight of the crown. One minute you're slipping past tutors to watch the market drummers. The next you're seated on a lion-carved throne in Niani with foreign emissaries bowing low and muttering words you don't even recognize. Your advisors shuffle around you like chess pieces. Each one whispers something different. Secure the trade routes, build another mosque, marry someone politically convenient. You nod, smile, and pretend you aren't quietly panicking. Because let's be honest, no one teaches you how to rule an empire overnight. So you do what any sensible young king would do. You ask questions. You summon griots, scholars, traders, generals, even your grandmother, who once smacked a sultan's envoy for not removing his shoes. You ask them all the same thing. What makes a great king stay great? The answers are long. Salt trade justice, religion, generosity. Your grandmother just says, don't be boring. You write that one down twice. And then maps. You become obsessed with them. At night, by the flicker of oil lamps, you pore over fragile scrolls and cracked leather atlases. The kind that smell like smoke and camel sweat. North of Mali, there's the vast Sahara swallowing towns like a greedy beast. East, the Holy Lands. South, forests and kingdoms no one dares map yet. But it's the West that haunts you. That's where your predecessor vanished chasing a dream across the sea. Historians still argue whether he was mad, brave, or simply bored. But he left behind a trail of uncertainty and a job that now rests squarely on your shoulders. So you expand the royal court. You promote thinkers and scribes, build schools for the sons of merchants, and hire the best map makers you can find. One even claims to have seen snow. You laugh, then realize he's serious. As you study maps, you also study people. The empire stretches far beyond Niani riverside towns, distant provinces, desert outposts, where the king is just a story whispered beside cooking fires. So you travel. You ride west to Ualata, where salt slabs stack taller than donkeys. You head north to Takeda, where copper shimmers red under the sun, and traders drink tea spiced with cinnamon bark. You even pass through Gao, still a little unruly, a little proud, but worth keeping an eye on. Everywhere you go, you ask the same question. How can we do better? Sometimes you get smart answers. Sometimes you just get goats. But you listen. You're not afraid to get dusty. In one village, you sit on the ground and share millet with a smith who tells you gold is fine, but iron wins wars. In another, a blind griot sings a song about the day you were born, even though you've never met him. You feel something shift in your chest. You don't know it yet, but the Empire's beginning to believe in you, not just obey you. You return to Niani with a clearer map in your mind, not of roads, but of people, and you begin to reshape things. You create a council of voices, not just nobles. You organize scribes to standardize laws even if the ink stains your own fingers. You encourage scholars to come offering them gold libraries, and sometimes just a quiet room and dates soaked in honey. One day, a Berber teacher from Tlemcen arrives with nothing but a reed pen and 1,000 questions. He stays for years. Your court begins to feel like a river delta, overflowing with voices, languages, books, and rumors. And still you dream of maps. At night, you take your reed stylus and draw crooked lines in the sand, imagining what lies beyond your borders. One day, you draw a ship sailing west. You hesitate, then wipe it away. Still too soon. Now the gold. You got a lot of it. Not metaphorically, literally. Mines run like veins through your empire. Bure, Bambouk, and beyond. Gold is so abundant, it's not just currency, it's decor. Toothpicks gold. Fan handles gold. Even fishing lures dusted with you guessed it gold. You try to balance it. You regulate how much gold enters the market, how much leaves, and how much just sits quietly in royal vaults probably bored. But not everyone is happy. Some older nobles grumble about your modern ideas. A few coastal traders try to smuggle nuggets wrapped in sheep bladders. You catch them, find them, and then in a moment of brilliance, hire them to run anti-smuggling patrols. They grumble, but do the job. And then come the rumors. They float in with the caravans. Whispers of Cairo, Baghdad, even distant Constantinople. Cities of silk stone and silver towers. You've read about them in scrolls, but now the merchants speak of them like dreams with roads leading straight to your door. A spark catches. You decide to make a journey, a big one. You want the world to know Mali isn't just a place on a trader's tongue. It's power, culture, wealth, faith. But first you need a plan. And camels, so many camels. One night under the stars, a griot sings of a king who will one day walk across the sands and shake the world with gold-dusted feet. You smile. You know that king. The decision is made even if no one dares say it aloud, yet you're going on pilgrimage. Tau, Mecca. The heart of the Islamic world, the place where prayers converge and dust from every corner of earth meets under sacred domes. But first you prepare. And by prepare, I mean you dive headfirst into logistical madness. A journey across the Sahara isn't a casual camel stroll. It's a rolling city, a moving empire. You're not just packing a bag and grabbing a walking stick, you're assembling a caravan of 60,000 people. Yes, you heard that right, 60,000. And 100 camels just for gold. That's not even counting the food camels. Or the water camels. Or the camels just carrying decorative fans because you refuse to sweat like a peasant. Reasonable. The whole thing feels more like a parade than a pilgrimage. There are servants, scribes, soldiers, cooks, singers, dancers, griots, diplomats, holy men, barbers, and even ostrich feather fanners, whose only job is to make sure you look breezy. Somewhere in the mix is a guy who just carries your sandal cleaning water. Because of course there is. But you're not just showing off. Not entirely. This pilgrimage, your Hajj, is your chance to tie Mali visibly and spiritually to the greater Muslim world. To show that this land of gold and dust isn't some exotic fringe, but a central thread in the fabric of Islam. You're proving a point without saying a word. Still, your advisors panic. They warn you of lot bandits. Sandstorms, poisoned wells, and desert curses. One griot swears the dunes near Tagaza whisper secrets that make men mad. Another warns you that if you misstep in Cairo, you might end up politically embarrassed or, worse, economically entangled. You nod patiently. Then you order triple supplies and gold-threaded tents with air vents. Let the wind take care of the rest. The route is brutal. You head north from Niani through Ualata, where salt is so valuable it's stacked like gold bricks and guarded like a jealous lover. From there, you cross the Sahara, that endless expanse of nothingness that swallows even the boldest. It tests you. The sun bakes everything. Sand gets into your teeth, your robes, your scrolls. A caravan collapses from thirst, and your water manager, a guy who swore he had desert instincts, gets demoted to tent scrubber. You survive a minor sandstorm by huddling under a camel. It farts in your face. Humbling. At night, though, the Sahara is a different beast. The stars bloom wide above cold and glittering. You sit quietly by the fire, listening to griots whisper stories and guards murmur prayers. Sometimes you catch yourself sketching maps in the dirt again. You can't help it. And then there's books. You've brought dozens. Religious texts, legal commentaries, trade manuals, even one suspiciously poetic astronomy scroll. You read by lantern light, occasionally smacking a scorpion off your mat with the Quran. Dual purpose. Historians still debate how much you learned during this journey and how much you already knew. But something shifts in you out here. Away from the throne. Away from the safety of the palace. You begin to feel the size of the world. And your own pulse within it. You cross into Egypt through the port of Aswan and things immediately get intense. Egypt, ruled by the Mamluks, is polished and ancient. Streets buzz with perfume merchants, calligraphers, date sellers, and dusty philosophers who quote Aristotle and demand snacks. Everything smells like rosewater and sun-baked stone. And they're watching you. Word spreads fast. A black king from the south, they whisper, with gold enough to drown Cairo. You're swarmed. Children chase your camel. Nobles invite you to banquets before you even finish setting up camp. You're like a walking treasure chest with a crown. And yes, you do have a throne that mounts onto a camel. With steps, gold-plated. People lose their minds. But you stay composed. You pray publicly. You give generously. You meet with imams, judges, and theologians. You listen. You even impress a few hard-nosed scholars who originally scoffed at that flashy gold king and now can't stop quoting you in their Friday sermons. Still, not everything goes smoothly. One Egyptian official demands you kiss the ground, tay before the sultan. It's traditional. You politely decline, then less politely. Eventually you compromise, you kneel respectfully, but you don't grovel. Mali bows to God, not to men. It becomes a small scandal. Papers get written. Poets get dramatic. A pigeon might have been involved. But you don't care. You're too busy planning gifts. Because here's where the story takes a turn. You start handing out gold. Not little tips, we're talking literal treasure floods. You give gold to merchants, the poor mosque leaders. Strangers, guards, probably a few cats. Some reports say you were dropping gold like confetti at a wedding. The Cairo economy actually tanks. Inflation hits like a desert wind. Prices go wild. Bread costs double. People panic. Historians still argue whether you did this intentionally, Mosin, as political theater, or if you just had no idea what a destabilized economy looked like. Either way, you broke Cairo. Not exactly what the scholars had in mind for charity. Still, you make an impression. Huge processions, lavish donations, royal meetings. One chronicler says the people began calling you King of the Gold of the West. And then, after nearly a year of dust prayer poetry and economic chaos, you're ready. You leave Cairo behind. The road to Mecca stretches ahead. You've crossed deserts, survived stink camels, outdebated scholars, crashed one entire city's financial system. Now it's time to see the holiest place of all. You ride on toward Mecca with the wind behind you and sand in your sleeves, always sand, endless sand. But it doesn't matter. Your caravan has survived the Sahara. It has danced through Egypt, dazzled Cairo, and scattered gold like it grew on acacia trees. And now the air starts to feel heavier, holier as you reach the Hejaz. The pilgrims around you become quieter. The songs fade, replaced by murmured prayers and the occasional takbir, rising softly with the breeze. You start seeing more white simple garments, white flags, tense robes. This is no longer a spectacle, this is Mecca. When the city finally reveals itself, it doesn't roar, it hums. Stone and dust and devotion packed into narrow lanes, arched doorways and markets that smell of frankincense and goat stew. The Kaaba looms at its center, not grand in size, but massive in meaning. You dismount. Even the most bejeweled princes do. In front of the Kaaba, you are only a servant of God. So you shed your gold-threaded cloak. You slip into Wahai Ram, 2 plain white cloths, and enter the holy mosque like every other pilgrim. No fan-bearers, no feathered horses. Just you barefoot on the sun-warmed stone, stepping into sacred space. And it's overwhelming. The Kaaba is quiet but not silent. Pilgrims weep. Some laugh. Some just stare like they've found the final answer to every question. You circle it 7 times clockwise. Each lap peels something off your heart. Arrogance, fear, uncertainty. You press your forehead to the black stone, and for once you don't think of gold. The scholars you brought from Mali, half expecting you to lecture or perform, watch as you disappear into prayer. They follow. This moment isn't for show. It's for you. You pray long and hard. For your people, for peace, for your own soul, and for the wisdom to carry what comes next. Afterward, you begin to notice details. The quiet kindness of the water bearers, the patient rhythm of the Quranic reciters, the unexpected generosity of a butcher who insists you take an extra skewer of lamb for no reason at all. You realize that Mecca is not a city of kings. It is a city of equals. Everyone here is dusty, tired, blessed, and searching. Even you. And then come the scholars. Oh yes, they come like bees to wild honey. Word has spread the Emperor of Mali has arrived with wealth, with books, and more importantly, with questions. You hold councils under tented roofs debating theology, governance law. You trade ideas with North Africans, Yemenist Persians, even a wiry scholar from Al-Andalus who quotes Plato more than the prophet, and still somehow wins arguments. You listen more than you speak, though. You know that wisdom has teeth. You're not here to impress, it's learning you hunger for. You study Makkiyah Sharia law with a Syrian jurist who's more interested in dates than doctrine, but knows the Muwatta by heart. You copy notes by lantern light. One night, you fall asleep mid-verse and wake up with ink on your face. You're changing, not in some dramatic thunderclap way, but gradually, like wind-shaping rock. You feel the pull of something deeper than power. Purpose. And then there's the merchant. He appears casually one evening, claims he's from Basra, wears too much perfume, speaks a little too fluently for someone who's just a date seller. He flatters you, offers to help you secure allies, drops names he shouldn't know. Historians still argue whether he was a Mamluk agent, an Abbasid loyalist, or just a very nosy opportunist. You smile politely. Listen. Then have your guards escort him to the outer tents for some quiet questioning. He leaves 2 days later with a limp and a newfound interest in silence. You return to your studies. The most impactful conversation of all, a quiet one. A blind scholar from Tunisia takes your hand one afternoon and says, "Gold can build many things, but only faith can build meaning." You remember that, for years. As the Hajj ends, the city swells with farewells. Friends embrace. Pilgrims promise to write, knowing they never will. You sit in your tent, reading your notes by moonlight. There are so many ideas: architecture, law, education, infrastructure. You want to take it all back home. But most of all, you want to take back the feeling that humility isn't weakness. That knowledge is a form of worship. That even emperors should sometimes walk barefoot. As you prepare to leave Mecca, you look back one last time. You don't see buildings. You don't see crowds. You see a center of heartbeat that connects empires and deserts and forests alike. And it's calling you not to stay, but to return home and build something wholly of your own. You begin the journey back from Mecca with your mind humming louder than your caravan's jingling brass bells. But this return trip, it isn't a retreat. It's a bought mission. You're not going home the same man. You left Mali a king rich in gold. You're returning a king plus rich in vision. And you've brought more than just sand in your boots. Books, dozens of them. Works of law, poetry, astronomy, grammar, geometry. Some so rare the scholars clutch them like newborns. You bring back people, too. Teachers, architects, imams, musicians, poets. One man claims to have invented a wind-powered fountain. You're not sure you believe him, but you bring him anyway. Can't hurt. Most prized of all, an Andalusian architect named Abu Ishaq al-Sahili. A wiry, intense man with a beard like a feather duster and strong opinions about arches. He talks fast, builds faster, and insists that mud brick can be divine if molded with intent. You don't know what that means yet, but you like the sound of it. Your caravan swells again. Not with dancers in gold this time, but with ideas. You now travel like a moving university. University on hooves. Every night around, the fire debates break out. One camel herder ends up quoting Aristotle while skinning a goat. Progress. You retrace your steps through Cairo, still limping economically from your last visit. The Mamluks eye you, warily hoping you don't bless them with another financial collapse. You don't. This time you move quietly, well as quietly as a caravan of thousands can move. The Sahara greets you like an old frenemy. Dry, relentless, gorgeous. You trudge through the dunes with cracked lips and high spirits. The sun bakes you, but your vision keeps you going. You pause in towns on the way home, not just to rest, but to plant seeds. In Takeda, you speak with copper miners about fairer trade rates. In Ualata, you sponsor a new Quranic school. In Gao, you meet with local leaders and slip gold into the hands of one rising scholar whose name you forget, but whose words stick with you. The camel that walks alone gets eaten. Build caravans of minds. Finally, you reach Niani. The capital welcomes you like a long-lost father. Streets burst with drums. Children throw baobab leaves in your path. People dance. Someone releases doves that immediately try to steal dates from your guards' bags. Chaos, joy, you're home, but you don't sit back. You don't lounge in luxury and tell tales about your journey while sipping tamarind juice. No, you can start building. And not just buildings, institutions, systems, legacy. You summon Abu Ishaq al-Sahili and set him loose with blueprints and a blank check. Well, not a check, but sacks of gold and a mandate to transform Night Timbuktu. Timbuktu, already a thriving hub of trade, suddenly becomes keep something more. A spiritual and intellectual beacon. You pour wealth into libraries, schools, and mosques. You commission the Jingareber Mosque, a monumental mud brick structure with wooden beams jutting like ribs across its frame. It hums in the sun like it's breathing. Al-Sahili insists on adding a rainwater runoff system. Mud must last, he says. You fund the Yansankor University, where students come to debate theology, science, even medicine. You sponsor copyist guilds. Scribes who replicate precious manuscripts by hand, their ink-stained fingers turning knowledge into permanence. Books start to multiply like grains in a harvest. Mali is changing, not just in size or wealth, but in character. You shift the capital's priorities. You start standardizing currency. You create rules about weights and measures to keep markets fair. You draft land management laws based on both Asharityaksopsite and local Mande custom, a legal fusion that surprises even the most cynical clerics. But not everyone's impressed. Some old nobles complain about these foreign ideas. One even mutters that you're turning Mali into a second Cairo. You respond by appointing his nephew as Timbuktu's head librarian. The noble shuts up. The nephew thrives. Historians still argue whether these reforms were top-down genius or just a happy collision of resources and timing. Doesn't matter. You see Mali blossoming, and you know it's working. You also double down on religious unity. Every town gets a central mosque. Friday prayers become a chance for community decisions. Imams become civic leaders. Faith isn't just a ritual anymore, it's a framework for how the empire runs. Of course, some things stay the same. You still like gold, still keep a private chamber filled with the rarest nuggets. Some shaped naturally like fish birds, one even shaped like what you swear is a hippo doing yoga. You don't tell anyone. You still have griots at court. They now weave tales not only of Sundiata Keita, but also of your own pilgrimage. They call it the Journey of the Gold King. Sometimes they exaggerate. You let them. You still sneak into libraries late at night, scrolls under your arm scribbling notes like a student trying to beat the sunrise. Because deep down you still see yourself as a learner, sis. And Mali is your classroom. Timbuktu hums like a well-tuned drum under your watch. Dusty and sun-scorched. Yes, but now home to scholars in flowing robes, markets choked with books and mosques that shimmer under the Sahel sun. You walk its alleys and feel the rhythm changing. No longer just a trading post. Now, a heartbeat of an empire. You don't do this by half measures. You fund scholars not just from Mali, but from far beyond. Egypt, Fez, Persia, Al-Andalus. Some ride in proudly with diplomas. Others come barefoot guided by stars and reputation. You welcome them all, offering rooms, ink stipends, and what you call thinking food, mainly dates, milk, and honey cakes served between lectures. Abu Ishaq al-Sahili becomes your partner in crime. He wanders Timbuktu with a measuring rope, scowling at foundations and muttering about angle purity. You let him build his weird sloped minarets and skylight domes. People mock him until the first mud dome survives a monsoon. Then everyone shuts up and copies him. You don't just build mosques either. You establish a judicial circuit. Sending traveling scholars trained in both Islamic law and Mande custom to settle disputes in far-flung villages. Justice starts to smell less like smoke and vengeance and more like structure. One morning, your council meets to discuss a case where two camel owners are arguing over a salt-covered gold nugget. The judge rules that they should each lick it once and decide who needs it more. You don't know whether to laugh or applaud the compromise. You do both. Outside of Timbuktu, the empire stretches farther than ever before. The rivers pulse with canoes filled with kola nuts, ivory smoked fish, and of course gold. Caravans snake across the desert carrying salt from Tagaza, copper from Takeda, and sometimes a bored cat lounging on top of a grain sack. You invest heavily in infrastructure. Roads are widened, river ports reinforced, wells dug and marked with stone. One town even requests a canal. You approve it. A scholar later writes that you made the land thirst less. You like that. Meanwhile, the griots sing. They follow you around like shadows with drums. The tale of your Hajj becomes mythic. One version claims you rode across the desert on a giraffe. Another insists you bribed a sandstorm to get out of your way. A third says you made gold rain from your sleeves like magic. You deny none of it, because why ruin a good bedtime story? Still, you stay grounded well, mostly. You still wake early. You walk the palace gardens. You speak to your staff by name, know their families, remember which one has a goat named Thunder who eats scrolls. You've ruled long enough to understand that power is less about control and more about memory? Who remembers what and who chooses to forget? But it's not all golden roses. Trouble brews in the far north near the salt mines. One governor gets greedy, taxing traders double and blaming royal policy. You send a polite letter, then a less polite one, then a soldier named Bakoro who doesn't do polite. The rebellion folds in a week. You're reminded even empires need house cleaning. And not everyone loves your reforms. Some nobles miss the old ways, the looser rules, the bribes, the fun of occasional border raids. One even starts spreading rumors that you're too Arab now that Timbuktu is becoming a foreign city. You invite him to a scholarly debate. He loses. You appoint his rival to lead the Copper Bureau. Progress. Historians still argue whether Timbuktu truly rivaled Cairo and Baghdad in your time, or whether that came later. But there's no question you lit the fire. Even European traders camp start to notice. Word of a golden king with a kingdom rich in books and laws trickles up the coast through North Africa and across the Mediterranean. You hear whispers of cartographers sketching your empire into their atlases, not just as a place, but as a person. You smirk at the thought. A king so rich, so wise that even faraway lands draw him. Sitting on a throne holding a nugget like a crystal ball. And you're not done. You send emissaries west to the Wolof states and Fota Jalan, south to the forest kingdoms near the Ivory Coast. You welcome their kings debate treaties and tell them straight-faced that Timbuktu has better everything, especially tea. Some agree, others don't. But they respect you. Even your court changes. Where once stood gold-dripping warriors now stand diplomats in layered robes, arguing finer points of law and trade. Griots still drum, but now also carry ink pots. Your palace holds both swords and syllabi high. You're reshaping what empire means. One morning you stand atop the Jingardeber Mosque and watch the city stretch outward, rooftops, markets, dust trails in the dawn. And for a moment it hits you. You've done it. Not just ruled, but raised something that hums beyond your lifetime. You stand at the edge of your empire once again, but this time facing inward. Mali, fat with trade and bursting with books, is yours. The gold flows. The people chant. And yet, you feel a pull. You want the world to know. Not just merchants and map makers, the whole world. Every scholar, every king, every curious monk, peering at a map in some drafty European monastery. They need to know Mali isn't some distant gold splotch. It's a center. So you decide to take the story global. The perfect vessel, another pilgrimage. But this one isn't for your soul, it's for reputation, You gather an even grander caravan than before. That's right, bigger. As in more people, more camels, more gold, more theater. Your advisors are horrified. They mutter about costs and logistics. You just smile and summon your tailors. The route begins like before north across the Sahara past salt towns and desert wells, but this time, your focus isn't Mecca. It's Cairo, again. Because Cairo is your stage. When you arrive, the Mamluk officials squint in disbelief. Not again their faces say, but it is again, and it's bigger. This time you bring servants. 500 lakhs, slaves each carrying a gold staff. $100. Camels loaded with gold dust. Horses decked in brocade. Dancers' griots even. A walking golden throne. Yes, you bring a throne that walks. 4 men lift it. You wave like a prince in a parade. Children scream. Merchants faint. One scribe forgets how to write and starts drawing hearts instead. It's not just showmanship, though. You give lavishly. You donate to mosques, buy food for the poor tip poets' fund schools, and literally throw gold in the air during public prayers. It sounds like rain. People scramble for it, eyes wide. An old man tries to catch some in his turban. It works. But here's the thing. Too much of a good thing is still too much. Cairo's economy is still recovering from your last visit. It collapses again. Gold prices plummet. Bread costs skyrocket. Merchants hoard goods. Some try to blame you, others just start offering Mali and prices slang for over-the-top generosity. Historians still debate. Did you know what you were doing? Was it economic naivete or a genius power play? Either way, you leave Cairo not as a guest, but as a legend does. From there, the story spreads like wildfire. Through Damascus, Jerusalem, across the Red Sea, and up into Anatolia. Across the Mediterranean to Genoa and Venice. All anyone can talk about is Gidebaum, the Black King of the West, who walks with more gold than God's bankers. And it gets better. Somewhere in Andalusia, a cartographer named Abraham Cresques hears the tale. He grabs a sheet of vellum, dips his pen, and draws you. Not a symbol. You. Seated on a throne in the middle of Africa, holding a nugget of gold the size of a mango, wearing a crown, smiling like you know something no one else does. You've become a mighty myth that walks on. Meanwhile, back home, your messengers relay reports. Timbuktu continues to grow. Scholars arrive weekly. The Jingareber Mosque needs repairs from overuse. Children now recite verses and multiplication tables. One town builds a sundial. Another names a street after your camel. But you miss it. The glitter of foreign cities is starting to dim. The poetry of Cairo feels thinner this time. You've dined with sultans, but you miss the taste of grilled millet and honeyed baobab. You've bathed in marble baths, but nothing feels as good as splashing your feet in the Niger River at dusk. So the second pilgrimage ends not in a bang, but in a craving for home. You turn your caravan south once more. This time you're not the student, the pilgrim, or even the reformer. You're the king who just bent the world's attention toward Mali, and it's time to get back to work. You return to Mali not with dust in your beard and wonder in your eyes, but with strategy. The world has noticed you now. Cartographers are sketching your throne, poets are reciting your gold-drenched arrival in Cairo, and merchants are naming their sons Musa out of sheer economic optimism. But you want more than fame. You want much structure. Something that lasts long after the griots stop singing. So you begin again. You've walked the sands, sat under domes of learning, and watched markets rise and fall like desert mirages. Now you turn Mali from a realm of stories into an institutional engine. The first stop, Timbuktu, of course. The place has changed while you were away. The streets are louder, the libraries fatter, the mosques packed. Some kids can now recite Quranic verses and calculate trade weights in 3 currencies. One 9-year-old corrects a scholar on camel tax law. You promote him immediately. Your architect Al-Sahili greets you with a blueprint rolled under each arm and a grin that says, "I built another dome while you were gone." You don't ask, you just nod. Together you draw up your grandest plan, yet a bureaucracy. Now I know bureaucracy doesn't sound thrilling, but it's the bones of empire. And you're tired of watching local governors treat provinces like personal playgrounds. So you divide the empire into provinces, each with a governor loyal to the throne, not to his ego. You assign judges, treasurers, scribes. You established unofficial tax routes with protected caravan rest stops. You even standardized the royal seal, no more chicken scratch signatures. One noble grumbles about too many rules. You send him to help copy manuscripts in Timbuktu. He writes a surprisingly emotional poem about ink stains. You also introduce a famine postal relay system. That's right, mail, Mansa Musa style. Riders on horseback with leather pouches passing messages like batons from town to town. Suddenly news travels faster than gossip. And in Mali, that's saying something. And then trade. The gold and salt were always there. But now you refine how they move. You set standard exchange rates. Gold dust salt slabs and copper rods. You even fund one of currency inspectors. Guys with tiny scales and judgmental eyebrows who weigh each nugget like it insulted their mothers. Markets boom. Trade with North Africa tightens. Merchants from Europe begin sending emissaries not just for goods, but for knowledge. You catch one Frenchman sneaking sketches of a Timbuktu mosque. You confiscate his ink and ask if he wants a guided tour. Meanwhile, Mali's influence spreads not just militarily, but culturally. Neighboring kingdoms send tribute. You don't demand it, but you do send your best griots to perform at their festivals, reciting epics about your Hajj and Timbuktu's libraries. It's soft power, and it works. Historians still debate whether Mali's influence during your reign was truly continental. But in your court, it feels like it. Letters arrive from Cairo, Fez, even Istanbul. Scholars request copies of manuscripts. Some kings ask for legal advice. One prince sends you a snow globe made of ivory. You're not sure what it is, but it looks nice on your shelf. Religion remains a central axis of your rule. You continue funding mosques, expanding Quranic schools, and supporting local Wulaman Islamic scholars who begin acting as both moral compasses and town judges. You don't just practice Islam, you adapt it. You encourage a uniquely Malian Islamic culture, where Arabic script dances beside Mande symbols and imams quote both the Quran and ancestral proverbs in sermons. In one village, the call to prayer is followed by a drum beat. You raise an eyebrow, then smile. Still, the work grinds on. You pass a law protecting caravan workers from abusive bosses. You fund tree planting along trade routes to shade travelers. You even commission a national census, or as close as anyone can get when half your population is nomadic and allergic to paperwork. One evening in your personal library, you sit beside a flickering lantern, rereading your own notes from Mecca. You find a margin scribble that says, "Build more than you conquer." You underline it twice, and you follow it. Your rule is no longer just about expansion or spectacle. It's about embedding a way of life. An administrative philosophy with gold at its fingertips and learning at its heart. But of course the griots still get the last word. One shows up at court and performs a song in your honor. It contains 117 verses, 3 animal impersonations, and a section where he compares you to a crocodile who makes the river bow. You laugh, then give him a goat. Progress continues. And so does your vision and empire, where wealth isn't just flaunted, it's organized, shared, taught, and remembered. By now, you're not just a ruler, you're a living symbol. Children play games where one gets to be Mansa Musa and hurl imaginary gold at passing donkeys. Traders toast your name over honey beer and roasted yam. Scholars scribble your decrees in the margins of theology books just because it makes the law feel smarter. You become more than a king. You're the idea of Mali itself. But with greatness comes the weight of legacy. You start to feel it slowly like a heavy robe draped across your shoulders in the dry season heat. Not fear exactly, but a sense that every decision echoes forward. One wrong move and that carefully balanced empire might tip like a lopsided caravan crate. So you start planning for what comes after you eyes. Your first task? Succession. Mali doesn't need a power struggle. You've seen what happens when heirs fight borders, shrink trust cracks, and the griots get way too dramatic. So you begin grooming your son Maha. Not an easy task. Maga is smart sharp even, but he's also soft-spoken, and occasionally too polite to fire a lazy tax collector. You know the empire needs more than kindness. It needs conviction. So you do what any father would do. Test him constantly. You send him on inspection tours. Make him judge petty land disputes. Once you have him audit Timbuktu's scribes and ask them to recite from memory. He forgets one scholar's name and gets a scroll chucked at his head. Good. Learning moment. Meanwhile, you focus on cementing your reforms. No half-finished blueprints. No half-written law codes. You insist everything be written, copied, and distributed. Some towns receive so many scrolls they start building reading huts just to house them. You visit one, sit cross-legged on a mat, and copy out a legal passage yourself just to prove you still know how ink feels. But the real key to legacy, memory. So you call on the griots again. You commission not just songs, but histories. Chronicle projects. You want more than stories. You want a record that Mali's greatness wasn't luck or legend, but intention. One griot gets so passionate he performs an entire lineage recitation backwards just to prove he can. You give him a donkey. He names it Timeline. You also task your scholars with assembling a royal chronicle, a written narrative of your reign that balances Mande oral tradition with Islamic structure. It's a cultural dance and it's tricky, but your scribes manage it, and in doing so, they invent something new. Malian historiography. Outside the palaces and libraries, the empire still breathes. Farmers near the Niger irrigate more land. You've supported canal construction using a mixture of Mande engineering and Egyptian techniques. Crops grow faster. Surpluses increase. Villagers throw harvest festivals in your name. One town sends you a yam the size of a dog. You don't know what to do with it, so you keep it in the treasury. And the empire's borders? They stretch even farther now. To the east, trade caravans report new relationships forming with Hausa city-states. To the south, forest kingdoms send diplomats bearing gifts. Kolanuts carved masks and one basket of birds that immediately escape and cause 2 days of chaos. To the north, salt continues to flow from Tagaza like pale stone gold. You reinforce its importance, making sure every caravan gets fair protection and fair pay. Your military escorts now include not just spearmen, but camel-mounted scouts with horn signals and coded drumming patterns. Border bandits vanish mysteriously. You don't ask how, but there are challenges, of course. A border skirmish near Gao erupts after a local chief claims a tax agent insulted his hat. You send Maga to mediate. He wears an even bigger hat. It works, mostly. And back in Niani, the capital beats with oak policy. You begin hosting what might be the medieval Sahel version of think tanks. Councils of jurists, poets, engineers, and economists. Yes, economists. Men who stare at gold flow patterns and declare things like, "We need more copper coinage in the western provinces." One of them invents a grain tax rebate system. You reward him with a goat. He names it inflation. Historians still argue whether Mali under you qualifies as a modernized, pre-modern state. Whatever that means. You just see a kingdom that now knows how to govern itself even without you in every room. And maybe that's the point. One night, you walk alone through your palace gardens. The moon sits fat over the trees. You pass a bench carved with lions, your favorite. You remember the boy who once stared at maps under an oil lamp imagining what lay beyond the sands. You've built more than an empire. You've built a memory that rules. And that memory you hope will outlast the gold. The years begin to stretch. Not in boredom, but in rhythm. You've ruled so long now that entire generations know nothing but your reign. Babies born the year you set out for Mecca are now scribes, tax collectors, and camel herders with families of their own. They've grown up in your Mali, where the roads are safer, the scholars louder, and the gold just as shiny as the legends say. But you're starting to feel the seasons more deeply. The sun bites a little harder. Your steps are slower, though you'd never admit it out loud. You still wear your signature crimson robe, though you've quietly had the sleeves made looser. Even greatness needs airflow. But you're not fading, not yet. Instead, you begin a new project, spiritual refinement. You've built the roads, the mosques, the universities. You've governed the trade, tamed the borders, trained the next rulers. Now you return to what first drove you across the dunes. Faith. Not performative, not political, just yours. You retreat often to a small mosque at the river's edge outside Niani. No throne, no fan bearers. Just a low mat, a leather-bound Quran, and the creak of the riverbank trees. You read by morning light and pray by stars. One night, a fisherman floats by, startled to find the King of Kings mumbling Tafsir commentary to himself. You nod. He nods. No words needed. Your advisors notice the shift. You've become more measured. You no longer jump to fund every eager inventor with a flying canoe design. You ask deeper questions. When a scholar visits from Fez and quotes Ibn Khaldun on empire cycles, you nod because you already read it. Twice. Still, you don't disengage. You oversee the final land surveys. Updating taxation zones based on river flood patterns. You double the number of rural schools. You visit towns you haven't seen in decades, some barely remember the sight of your face. They bow so deeply they practically merge with the dirt. In one such village you find a tiny mosque. Built in your name. The imam weeps when you arrive. You spend the night sleeping on a reed mat next to the minbar. It creaks when you roll over. You smile. Back in the capital, life continues. Your court bustles with clerks and poets. Trade caravans arrive daily thick with salt, ivory, leather, and spices that smell like pepper and surprise. You no longer need to micromanage. The systems hum, but then a shadow. A trusted governor dies one you trained one who had held your reforms together in the southeast. His replacement is eager but young. He makes a mistake, levies the wrong tax at the wrong time, angers the local chiefs. A revolt bubbles up. Not massive, not empire-breaking, but enough to sting. You gather your court and resolve it quickly. A public apology, a fair redistribution. A few whispered warnings in ears that need them. The revolt cools, but the moment sticks. Even this empire built like a monument is vulnerable to panimawad rust. Not from enemies, from forgetfulness. So you do something bold. You can start teaching it yet. Every week you hold open court, not to rule, but to instruct. You answer questions, you explain the reason behind laws, you unpack decisions, dissect treaties, retell the tale of your pilgrimage, not as a myth, but as a manual. Your griots hate it. You're making our stories boring, one says. You grin. Good, they'll remember it better. Still, you let them sing, and they do with more flair than ever. Now the songs tell of your humility, your river prayers, your dusty sandals, your booming laugh when a boy tried to sell you your own face carved on wood. You bought it, of course. But you're not just teaching politics. You're teaching time. No. You speak of the cycles, of rising and falling, of how even gold can lose its gleam. You remind people that Mali is great, because it adapts, not because it dominates. One scribe records your exact words. A river does not keep its shape by damming itself, but by flowing strong but changing. Historians still argue whether that quote is real or poetic embellishment. Doesn't matter. The scroll survives. And so does the idea. Even foreign emissaries notice the change. One Italian merchant comments that you now carry yourself less like a lion and more like a library. You're not sure if that's a compliment, but you take it. Meanwhile, rumors swirl. That you're building a secret palace made of marble. That you're commissioning a massive Quran written in molten gold. That you're planning to abdicate, sail down the Niger, and disappear into legend? Only one is partly true. You do begin designing your final project. Actually, a mausoleum, but not one to tower above the land like a challenge to time. No, yours will sit low and square, modeled after Saharan mosques with a white reading bench built beside it. You want people to learn beside your bones. Because more than being remembered, you want to remind. That wealth is borrowed. That power fades. That stories, if told well, can outlive empires. The sun rises slower these days, or maybe you're just waking earlier. You sip your morning brew sweetened with tamarind and dates and listen to the rhythm of your city coming alive. The soft bray of a donkey cart, the call of a boy selling millet cakes. The early recitation from the palace mosque. You smile. It's all still working. But deep down you can feel it. The quiet shift. Not decline, not yet. But a sort of handing over. Like an instrument you're tuning one last time before giving it to someone else to play. And so your focus narrows. Not to the borders or the gold or even the bureaucrats, but to people. Real breathing people. You start visiting schools. Not just the grand madrasas of Timbuktu, but dusty little huts in farming towns where kids balance slates on their knees. In one, a girl recites poetry so fiercely you nearly cry. In another, a boy reads Arabic upside down but corrects his own mistake before anyone else notices. That one you personally gift a book wrapped in indigo cloth, your court wonders if you've gone soft. You haven't. You've simply remembered that empires don't last unless their people know why they existed in the first place. So you start commissioning Tamsavaibuan, philosophical works, not just legal ones, essays on justice, generosity, ambition. You want future leaders to think, not just rule. Your scholars respond. One composes a treatise comparing good leadership to Myeksikoid, well-wrapped turban, tight balanced, and adjusted for every wind. You laugh, then promote him. But you also sense tension in the distance. To the east, the Songhai are stirring, once vassals now emboldened. Gao is swelling with ambition. Their traders are getting bolder, their rulers more independent. You know the signs. You were once the ambitious underdog yourself. Some urge preemptive action. War, occupation, reminders of Mali's size. You wave it off. Instead, you send books, teachers, griots. A soft show of strength, one that says, "We lead by legacy, not fear." Historians still argue whether that was wise or naive. Whether diplomacy delayed the inevitable rise of Songhai or only invited it faster. But again, you know what you're doing. Empires do not fall by force alone. They fall when they lose the loyalty of the minds. So you double down on culture. You commission a library cataloging every manuscript Mali owns. Arabic text, local Mande epics, commentaries on law, astronomy, medicine. You hire a team of blind reciters to memorize it all just in case. Redundancy is protection. In Niani, you expand your public plaza into a sort of learning garden, a place where scholars lecture beneath acacia trees and children play with letter tiles carved from gourd shells. One foreign visitor calls it a paradise of page and shade, and you mostly sit back and watch it breathe? But not entirely. You still intervene where it matters. When a merchant guild tries to undercut rural weavers by flooding the market with imported cloth, you impose a trade pause. When a corrupt judge favors wealthy landowners, you remove him publicly and replace him with a barefooted scholar from Jena who walks everywhere and quotes proverbs like parables. The people love it. Even the nobles, well, most of them adjust. Some still mutter that you're too generous or too quiet or more teacher than king. And maybe they're right, because in your mind, you're already speaking to a time. After you. Every scroll you touch, every speech you give, every law you sign now carries a quiet subtext. Remember why this was built. You begin writing your personal reflections. A scroll of maxims, lessons, warnings. Part memoir, part manual. You don't title it, but a scribe who copies it later names it the Gold King's Whisper. You include stories, funny ones, humbling ones, the mistakes you don't want erased, like the time you got lost in the Meccan backstreets and accidentally joined a wedding procession. Or the time a librarian in Timbuktu scolded you for misquoting a hadith twice. You laughed so hard your turban fell off. There's wisdom in vulnerability. There's power in saying, "I didn't always know." And quietly, without any decree or ceremony, the key people begin to change mind too. Merchants start giving more to their towns. Children argue over math problems instead of throwing rocks. A retired soldier opens a school for girls. You fund it anonymously. You've planted something deeper than law. You've planted like self-respect, yeah. And that's harder to conquer than any city. And then comes the moment you've quietly, reluctantly, wisely prepared for. You announce your retirement. Not a dramatic abdication with cymbals and criers. No sweeping declarations from golden balconies. Just a single, well-worded decree, written in clear Mande script and flowing Arabic, read aloud by a griot with a voice like warm smoke. The Lion of Mali shall rest his paws. The court gasps. The markets freeze. Children ask if the sun is going to stop rising, but you mean it. Your son Maga is ready or close enough. The boy who once flinched at tax disputes now walks through merchant councils like a seasoned judge. He has that dangerous gift of listening too well and speaking too little in air, not to your fire, but to your balance. You call him to your garden. Sit together under the baobab tree. No throne between you, no crown, just father and son. You hand him a small wooden amulet your mother gave you long ago. It's cracked. Worn. Insignificant to anyone else. To you, everything. He says nothing, just presses it to his forehead. You nod. It's enough. And so with barely a ripple you want it. Step back. Nod away. Not from Molly. You're still there, still watching. Still advising, still whispering corrections when Maga forgets the annual tribute cycle from Gao. But now, from the edges like the sun behind a curtain, present, but softened, you move to a modest residence near the Niger, far enough from the palace to breathe close enough to hear the drums if something's wrong. Your days become simpler. You rise before dawn, pray with the fishermen, take long walks along the water. People greet you with reverent whispers, some bow, others smile like they're trying not to cry. You prefer the smiles. You begin composing your final treatise, not on law, not economics, on time. You write that time is not a straight path but a wide river looping, doubling back, sometimes drying, sometimes flooding. You write that the wisest kings don't control the current, they build boats. One afternoon you host a group of young scholars in your courtyard. They ask endless questions. Did you really crash Cairo's economy? Is it true you rode a zebra once? What does gold feel like? You answer some, dodge others, then flip the script. You ask them what kind of Mali they want to build. One says a Mali with libraries in every village. Another a Mali where salt is free because salt should be joy. The last one a Mali that makes other empires jealous. You just grin. Careful, you say. That's how it all started. The empire continues around you. The post riders gallop. The caravans slither across the dunes. Timbuktu's scribes wear out their fingers. The Songhai send diplomats with suspiciously generous gifts. You attend court only rarely now, but when you do, the room still falls into reverent silence like a mosque before prayer. And then one day you feel it. Not pain, not fear, just a stillness. Your body, once strong enough to walk deserts, to ride across empires, now creaks. The sun feels heavier. Your breath a little shorter. The griots come less often, sensing your need for silence. The scholars more. They read to you. The Quran. Poetry. One reads a letter from a Moroccan merchant, thanking you for funding his grandfather's education decades ago. You hold it in your lap for hours. At night, you lie on your reed mat and watch the ceiling. There's a tiny crack up there shaped like a camel. You wonder if it's always been there. Maga visits more often now. He brings news, mostly good. He handles a grain dispute in Jenneh with calm. Keeps the border peace with Songhai. Sponsors a new mosque. People are calling him the steady rain. You're proud, but also amused. Your son is a gentle wave while you were a golden storm. Historians still argue what happens next. Some say you die quietly in your sleep beside the river. Others claim you vanished down the Niger sailing west to explore lands unknown. A few suggest you took one final caravan to Mecca, hoping to complete your circle. The truth, you don't mind what they believe. Because you know what you've built. You've turned a kingdom of merchants into a civilization of minds. You've forged gold into legacy. You've made memory into law. You've taught Mali how to stand, even without you. And so when the day does come, and the griots begin to mourn, you leave behind not just a body, not just a name. You leave behind us a rhythm. A heartbeat that pulses still centuries later through books, through bricks, through whispers and desert wind. Your passing is quiet like a candle going out in a sunlit room. Not dramatic. Not feared. Just expected. A man can build an empire from gold and grain, shape it with words and will, but even that man must one day exhale and not inhale again. The griots mourn, of course. Loudly, colorfully, musically. They beat drums not in sorrow, but in rhythm, because even your death deserves a beat that thumps through the soil. They sing your praises from Niani to Timbuktu, from the salt pits of Takhaza to the markets of Gao. No one can escape the melody of your memory. But Mali does not stop, because you prepared it not to. Maga takes the reins with a calm hand. No civil war. No backstabbing cousin claiming he had a dream from the ancestors. The system holds. The bureaucracy hums. Trade continues. That's the magic you've been taught the machine to run without the man. At first, your absence is eerie. People still look over their shoulders at council meetings expecting your voice. Children still ask if you're hiding in the palace garden. A merchant in Timbuktu builds a sand sculpture of you every morning at sunrise, lets it melt by noon, and starts over again. But slowly the empire breathes you in, and yet he breathes forward. Magha keeps the schools running, the postal system sharp, and the mosques funded. He lacks your fire, but he has your discipline. He introduces new tax codes, smarter salt allocation policies, and even pushes for canal maintenance. Which sounds boring until you realize it saves entire villages from dry season collapse. He doesn't match your fame, but he doesn't need to. He builds stability, not legend. Still, there are challenges. The Songhai grow bolder. Their trade network thickens. Gao is no longer just a dot on a map, it's a city of ambition. Their scholars quote your teachings in the morning and plot independence in the afternoon. Some nobles push Maga to invade, reassert dominance, repaint the maps. He declines. Instead, he sends more teachers, more traders, and one griot who composes a song so passive-aggressive it becomes a diplomatic scandal. The Songhai ruler responds with his own poem. A roasting duel ensues. Two empires trading verses instead of arrows for now. Historians still debate, did your gentle transition inspire a peaceful Mali? Or leave a vacuum that others would one day fill? Again, you're not around to care. Because now you've become everywhere? Your face is carved above mosque doors. Your sayings are recited at harvest festivals. Children name their goats after you, sometimes affectionately, sometimes ironically. In one town, a boy tries to write a play about your life using only puppets and mangoes. It flops. You'd have loved it. More importantly, your model of kingship becomes a template. Other rulers take note. A king in the Wolof states imitates your postal relay system. A queen in the forest kingdoms adopts your dual court model. One for law, one for learning. Traders in Morocco quote your price controls as if they were holy scripture. Even Europeans, those crusty sea-obsessed scribblers, begin mentioning Mali not as a place with gold, but as a place with structure. You've become the gold standard for governance, and your reforms start to ripple outward. The libraries in Timbuktu overflow. Books once stored in clay jars now move into shelves lined with camel leather and painted with geometric patterns. The children of traders become poets. The children of soldiers become scholars. One girl writes a medical manual combining Mande herbalism and Arabic diagnosis. It travels all the way to Cairo, where it's mistaken for a prophecy. Meanwhile, the gold keeps flowing, not just into pockets, but into purpose. Temples are restored. Public wells maintained. Scribes funded. The state doesn't just accumulate wealth, it circulates it like a bloodstream. But Mali is no longer just your Mali. It's changing. The outer provinces start to think more independently. One region elects its own local imam judge. Another begins producing its own salt bars with your seal stamped on them, even though you never authorized it. The griots say you would have yelled, first laughed second, and then figured out how to tax it. But these changes aren't collapses. They're evolution. Because what you really built wasn't an empire of borders. You built an empire of rhythm. Of routine, of balance, of memory. The wind still carries your name. The river still hums your legacy. And Mali, no longer watching you for every cue, begins to move on its own. Which, of course, was always the plan. Decades pass. The world spins. And slowly Mali begins to shift in ways no one, not even you, could fully predict. Your son Maga rules with calm precision, but he's followed by others less careful. Some sit the throne like it's a hammock, not a duty. Others chase glory like gamblers, tossing coins into wars that don't need to be fought. Still, the empire holds for a while, thanks to your bones, your blueprints, your rhythm. But time that ancient craftsman starts carving cracks. The Songhai. They stop sending diplomats. Then they stop sending taxes. Then they start sending scouts. Gao rises like a desert storm, no longer content with tribute. They want dominance. One ruler after another tries to hold the flood back, but the tide is turning. Salt prices shift. Gold routes drift. Trade favors new cities. Foreign merchants begin charting courses away from Niani toward the growing hubs in the east. And with them goes influence. It's not a collapse, it's a drift. Slow. Inevitable. Like a great tree leaning gently away from the sun. But even as Mali shrinks from its golden peak, your memory grows bigger. It begins to detach from strict facts. It becomes mythic. You become the king whose generosity caused inflation, whose throne walked who held a mango-sized nugget of gold in one hand and a civilization in the other. European cartographers still fumbling with Africa's borders draw you, seated like a god. Crown gleaming orb in hand, the only king in the entire southern hemisphere of their maps. They don't even know your real face. But they draw it anyway. Historians still argue how much is true. How much was real? Did you really give away so much gold? Cairo choked for years. Did you really walk with 60,000 people into the desert? There are documents, yes. Eyewitnesses, scrolls, but also contradictions, holes, exaggerations. Does it matter? Because your name, Mansa Musa, now it transcends documentation. It lives not in footnotes, but in feeling on it. In Mali, your stories become sacred bedtime tales. Parents whisper them to children beside flickering oil lamps. Once there was a king who turned gold into knowledge, who made books more valuable than bricks, who crossed deserts to bow but returned standing taller than any minaret. Your mosques still stand. Jingureber and Timbuktu still used. Still prayed in. Pilgrims touch its walls and feel your pulse. Scholars climb its steps and see your fingerprints in the mortar. The very dust hums with your echoes. And the libraries. Despite invasions, looters fire, and time thousands of manuscripts survive. Hidden in trunks buried in sand passed hand to hand, like relics. Some are wrapped in goatskin, others folded into fabric. But all still breathing. With your dream that Mali wouldn't just be known for its gold, but for its mines. And what of the world? Centuries later, your name reaches places you never imagined. Brazil. France. Harlem. A history professor in Chicago gives a lecture titled The Gold King of West Africa. A graffiti artist in Dakar sprays your name across a concrete wall. In London, a child Googles richest person in history and finds, you're now the eternal benchmark next for wealth. Not Bezos, not emperors, not oil tycoons. You. But the truth is that wealth was never the point. You knew it, you showed it over and over again. You turned that gold into my mosque's minds music. Into systems and scrolls and songs that outlived your reign. Empires rise and fall, trade routes shift, capitals crumble. But a man who invests in memory, he never really dies. In the archives of Timbuktu, one scroll remains unsigned but heavily annotated. Some believe it's yours. It contains a single phrase written in Mande and repeated 3 times. When the body fades, let the story rise. And it has. Your story has risen higher than your throne ever did. It spans oceans. It floats between languages. It rides in classrooms and prayers and lullabies. And somewhere right now, a child is hearing it for the first time. A king. A pilgrimage, a golden path lit by books and belief. And they smile, because somehow, even after all this time, they remember you. Centuries have passed, the rivers have shifted course. The sand dunes now cover cities once full of song, but the echo of your footsteps still travels soft and steady through the corridors of time. This is the part no one talks about. After the thrones crumble, after the maps are redrawn, after the gold is spent, and the scrolls gather dust, what remains? Not your palaces, most are gone. Not your crown, it vanished, probably melted down or stolen during one of Mali's later conflicts. Not even your family name, which eventually fades into dynastic blur, a flicker in the long candle of history. But your story, that's the thing that won't die. It moves. Like trade caravans that cross new borders. Like griots who forget dates but never forget rhythm. Like songs hummed beneath breath in towns that have no idea who built the roads they still walk. Historians, bless their hearts, try to box you in. They chase your legacy through pages and parchment, arguing whether you were truly the wealthiest man in history, whether you really passed through Egypt with elephants, or if that was just a storyteller's flourish. Let them argue. Because the modern truth lives elsewhere. It lives in that boy in Timbuktu who still dreams of building a library. In the girl in Bamako who recites your name like a magic word before taking her exams. In the muralist in Accra who paints you riding a camel shaped like a book. It lives in the idea that greatness isn't what you own, but what you share is. And no one shared quite like you. Gold. You gave it away so freely it rattled the economy. Power. You handed it to scholars and judges, to books and wisdom. Time, you poured decades into laws, road systems, gardens, and trust. Even your own legend, or you didn't hoard. You released it. Let it fly like dust into the wind, knowing someone somewhere would inhale it. Centuries later and feel richer, just for breathing it in. And now, you've become bedtime history. The soft hum of a name that soothes people to sleep. A tale not of war and conquest, but of possibility. Because once upon a time a man walked out of the Malian savannah with gold in his satchels and humility in his heart. He traveled across continents to bow to a greater force. He came back with more than treasure. He came back with vision. And he built something. A kingdom of books, of justice, of rhythm, of stories. And those stories, they're still being told. Because no matter how far the empire faded, how forgotten its borders became, how cracked the stones of its mosques, the name Mansa Musa still glows dim and distant maybe, but eternally warm. So now, as this journey winds down and the light fades just a little, know this. You walked alongside a king tonight, not one of swords and plunder, but of scrolls and silence, of sand and strength. A king who traded in dreams. A king who understood the true currency of greatness. Memory. And somehow, it feels like you'll carry a little of him with you too. So now drift back from the heat of the Sahel, from the chants in Timbuktu, from the shimmer of gold and the soft shuffle of sandal steps and desert dust. Let the sound of camels fade. Let the scent of incense and ink dissolve. Let the image of a man seated beneath a baobab tree, whispering verses to the wind, gently slip from your mind. You're here now, safe, resting. And all the long roads behind you, real and imagined, have led to this quiet moment. Breathe in slowly as if you're inhaling stories themselves. And as you exhale, let go of time. Let go of centuries. Let go of kings and questions. You don't need them now. Because you've seen what a single life can build, not through force, but through patience. Through thought. Through generosity. You've learned that legacy doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers. And your mind can keep wandering if it wants. That's okay. Let it travel. Let it float over sand dunes and river deltas. Let it circle back to the books, the mosques, the smiling boy in the schoolyard with a scroll in his lap. Let it return to that feeling that maybe we are more than dust. We are memory. You're safe now. You're warm. The story is done, but the dream doesn't have to end just yet. So close your eyes. Sink deeper into the calm. Let the story settle around you like a silk robe, soft and familiar. And sleep well, traveler. Sweet dreams. It costs end of script. Sweet dreams.
you.